Hi, BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it's time for the wrap up of the first quarter. This is me. I'm trying new this year, so I don't feel as pressured to get a lot of books read. Because yes, I know it's not about quantity; it's about quality of what you're reading, and I enjoyed my reading for the first quarter. I had a good time, but there's still a sense of pressure because, and it's on me, it's me, not anyone else's problem. And this is just what I feel like I want to try and see if this kind of helps me relax a little bit more with not letting myself feel pressure to read so many books in a month. And like I said, I enjoyed what I read this year, and I've enjoyed what I read before. It's not that I will pick books that I'm probably not gonna like just because of that pressure. Like, I don't sacrifice the quality of my reading. I pick whatever book I'm interested in. It's more that sometimes I wonder if I at least rush a little bit, or just I will feel anxious to make sure. Oh, I got to get a book included, which there was a little bit of that still, but it's not going to happen overnight. I'm not going to instantly be like, now that I'm doing this, instantly not feel a little bit like, oh, I need to include this kind of book or read a book that I can get through quicker. Like, that's not going to go, it's not going to go away anytime soon. I feel like it will happen over time. I'll eventually get to the point where I won't care at all. Hopefully, anyway. So far I've had a good first quarter. And I try to make sure I mix it up a lot more. I mean, I feel like I still mix it up, but there is definitely a heavy priority on the fantasy for me. And I did make sure I knocked out some books that were longer, but that were 500 plus pages, and I did reread two series, although one of them was a series I no longer have physical copies of them, but I did listen to it on my audio on Libby, on the Libby app. And then one was a situation where I had read the previous book, the first book, a year or two ago, and then I finished it this year. And I might have read the first book last year, at the beginning of last year. I don't remember. I would have to look. But I did complete it this this quarter, and I could have potential. I don't think I can complete any other series. But I have come close, continue to come close. But but it's more about wanting to complete more than one series throughout the year. So even though I only complete one series in the first quarter. That's okay, I made a choice. Like, I could have easily picked up the last book in some other series, but I didn't. So it's okay, Even if I only get one series per quarter read, at least it means that throughout the year I read more than one. That's what I care about. That I've knocked out more than one series through the whole year. It doesn't necessarily mean that I've knocked out more than one series in each quarter. And I also make sure I read some of the books that I've been like put aside, that I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep them or not. And actually, I might not have that problem anymore. I mean, I still have to, sift through my books and see if there's any books that I'm gonna get that I've decided to remove from my shelf. But I need to get another shelf. The only reason I got it though was because it's free. It was free, so, and I don't have the space for one. I'm not gonna get like another one after this. I have like there's one over there. Sorry, I have to actually look to count it. But you guys. But there's one. I have two over in this corner, and you've seen at least one and half of the other one when a couple of my videos. And then I have one over here. So I have 3 and now 4 shelves for my books. And I'm not going to get a 5th one anytime soon, unless I got rid of all my DVDs and made that one a bookshelf, but I'm not getting rid of. I do try to sift through my DVDs though too, like see if there's any DVDs that I'm fine with if I don't have it, because I still have a lot of DVDs and some Blu-rays. So, and then some of them, like some of the rom-coms, I liked them at the time, but I was there are some of them like I don't need them anymore. I don't watch them regularly. And now I debate about the Disney ones that I have, because now you can watch. I have Disney Plus. I can watch them on Disney Plus. So it's like, do I keep those? Do I keep the ones that are just my favorites? But then some of those DVDs and Blu-rays have special features that you can't get access to on Disney Plus. At least I don't think you can. Maybe you can. I don't know. I mean, I know there's a special features section on each, but with each movie. But I'm not sure. So it's like, yeah, I decide, and then there's some of them that are series that are only one DVD in the series. There were a couple of them where I had the box set of one season of a show, and it's like, there's no point in having that one season if I don't have all the other ones. So yeah, I got rid of those as well. One of the situations was actually where my mom wanted off the radio, which has not happened since, but she doesn't bother calling in or anything. Mostly because she was listening to talk radio most of the time, so. Anyway, so back on the topic of books. And then let's see what else. And like I said, I'm trying to read a couple make sure I include some sci-fi and horror. Like, I've also made sure I've read at least a couple books that are non-Stephen King related books. Now, one of them I've already, it's already gone off somewhere, gone to the roast office, I think. Because the next place I'm going to donate my other bags is going to be the White Castle books. And I did have to schedule a date of when I go there to donate books. So, it's already gone to the roast office, unfortunately, but that's okay. I mean, I can still talk about the book. I just don't have anything to show you guys for that book. But I have most of the other books to show you guys. Anything else that I can, I've read short stories. I made a dent in some of my short story collections. And I'm starting to like them a little bit better. I mean, short stories still are not my favorite. But I think, like, the best ones are horror, because horror is perfect for the short story format, I think. Because, one of the things that, not for everybody, obviously, because I know it's not for everybody, but I think for a lot of people, the horror, including for myself, is not being able to see the monster, or it ending really, like, in a way that's like, oh my god, what just, like, ending in a way that's where you have more questions than answers, and there's more of a mystery, or the ending is so abrupt. I think that's, like, perfect for horror. But I'm also one of those people who loves longer horror books. But, so I think the short story format is perfect for horror. And then I read one of the classic authors. He has a collection of short stories. And I have a bind-up of most of his works. And not just the short stories, and so I've read some of those too, which that's good, because that was actually a Christmas gift from 2 years ago, and I mean to finally pick it up. I mean, the thing is, though, the people, like, when I get books as gifts from family members, and even friends for that matter, because my core group of friends are all far away, and then the rest of and then it's like, it doesn't really, and the only one that out of my friend circle that actually, there's a reason, that actually gives me gifts is, far enough away that she doesn't see when I'm reading. So, and the same with my family. Like, my family doesn't pay attention to when I'm reading, but I still feel very self-conscious and feel guilty if I haven't read something they gave me for Christmas or my birthday. It's like, okay, I better pick it up. But then I have all these other books that have been sitting there for a long time that I haven't gotten to yet. So it's a vicious cycle. But at least I made some progress on something that was a gift. And I have been trying to make sure that I read books that I bought recently as well. A lot sooner rather than later, instead of them sitting there for years. But but then, like I said, but then again, there's also books I've been sitting there for years. I'm like, okay, I need to pick up those as well. So I'm still continuing trying to find a balance between reading and prioritize what books I need to prioritize. Maybe, like, trying to make sure I prioritize both books that I received as gifts, books that I bought recently, and the books that have been sitting there that I need to finally pick up that aren't just gifts from people. But like I said, with the gifts, people, the people that give these books to me, they don't necessarily pay attention to what I'm reading, so they're not gonna, like, interrogate me and be like, make sure I'm reading those books. Okay, so now let's get to the actual wrap-up part. So this is gonna be long because it's the first quarter, and I have read 29. Now, some of them are short stories and part of collections. So, I've read more than 29. Well, actually, no, I think it's 29 because I think some of the short stories I've actually listed them individually. So, really, I've read less. In some of the short stories collections, I haven't completed anyway. So, like, it's a situation where I haven't read the whole book, but I've read a few of the stories. Okay. So, I started out the year with Legends and Lattes, and this is one of the ones that I bought recently, so that gets points for me for reading a book that I bought more recently to the time I read it. And this is a cute, kind of has a little bit of rom-com meets fantasy feels. As it says, the book is low stakes. It's basically this orc, although to this day I still say she looks more like an ogre. Like, she reminds me of Shrek and Fiona with her physical appearance. She has decided to retire from this life of violence and wants to fulfill her dream of opening up a coffee shop. But no one has heard of coffee in the village she set shop at. And she ends up forming a sort of found family. There's this character, Tandri, I think I'm saying it right. She is a succubus, and she becomes her partner. And she also helps her, sell her business and, market her business. There's a bard that she hires eventually when she realizes Viv, that's the orc, when she realizes that, maybe she should also start selling some pastries and stuff for her business. She hires a baker. They call him a Radican, and someone else's video, they described him as like a badger type creature. I don't remember. But I'm assuming that's correct. And then there was this guy that I want to say he's a handyman I think his name is Cal. He's kind of the handyman, the mechanic, the person who does, the stuff that they don't know how to do. And we get to see the process of her slowly building this business up. And of course, it's low stakes, but there's still conflict. There's tax collectors in this village that wants to take her money before she can even, make money. Wants to take as much money as possible, and she's trying to fight them. And then there's also an old acquaintance of hers that was with her old team that she used to work with. Shows up believing she's using magical means to succeed in her business, and wants to help her, wants to steal whatever she's using and use it for himself. And this was so good. It was so cute and very sweet. Like, it's not, a masterpiece or anything, but just kind of fluff fantasy, the kind of fantasy that's just very easy reading, very just fun, and there's a little bit of romance. There's a couple fight scenes in there. There is a short story after you read the whole book. There is an added bonus of a short story that's kind of a backstory for Viv. And it's just a really heartwarming, fun fantasy that's, Reagan from Peruse Projects described it perfectly as like a Hallmark movie, but with fantasy elements to it, which makes it 10 times more interesting, I think. And I'm a Hallmark Christmas movie fanatic. I love Hallmark Christmas movies and all their cheesy glory. Although sometimes I do get bored of them after a while. If I watch too many, then I will get bored. But it's so fun, and just, I don't know what other words to use to describe it. Fun fluff, fantasy fluff. And he's continuing in this world. It's not a series, but it's kind of a companion system. I think it's probably gonna be like a companion type series. So not a series as in, you know, like it continues, but a series as in the next book is gonna take place in the same world. Kind of what Shannon, what is her name? The woman who wrote Priory of the Orange Tree. Samantha Shannon. Kind of like what she's doing with the Priory of the Orange Tree, where she's not continuing that story, but she wrote a book that just came out that's set in the same world and kind of a prequel to Priory of the Orange Tree. Now, I'm still going to read Priory of the Orange Tree first because I was watching Brittany win the book, one of her vlogs where she was reading the prequel book, and she recommended reading the prequel book first, but I don't have the prequel book yet, and I want to wait until it comes out in paperback. So, but anyway, yeah. So this was really good. I enjoyed it. I definitely recommend it. If you want lighter, fun fantasy. Okay, and then after that, I read another debut, which now has 2 more books coming out, and I think tomorrow, when the month marches over officially, because it's only the 31st as I'm filming this, I'm going to purchase the next book, The Spider, along with the next book to the sequel to this, along with The Name of All Things, which is the sequel to Ruin of Kings, which I'll be talking about that one in this route because I did finish that one. Okay, so The Wolf is kind of a Viking type story. You have these people called the Amyrcin. They rule this land. Their leader is known as the Black Lord, and these people called the Southerners years ago showed up, and they have been in a war trying to claim with these people, trying to prevent them from claiming their land. And they are now have a new leader, and he has been with help from the queen, who he's having an affair with. They decide to start another war with the Amyrcin. And in the beginning, we start with the battle between the Southerners and the Amyrcin, and the Black Lord gets killed in front of his son. What's his name? Okay, it doesn't say what his name is. I cannot remember what the son's. Maybe it says it here. Roper. His son Roper, who's very young. He's eager to be a leader, but he's also very young and naive, and he is shocked to witness his father get murdered, and they only leave him his father's head. They don't even give him his father's sword. And because he realizes they can't fight the Southerners at this time, he opts for them to retreat, which pisses off the Amyrcin because they are a warrior race, and retreat is not in their vocabulary. But meanwhile, so he's now forced to prove his worth as a leader and prepare his people for battle. But of course, he has a rival for the role of the Black Lord. And so not only does he have to prepare his people and prove his worth as a leader, but he has to prove his worth against this rival in the leadership role, who is really good at winning people over and giving people what they want. But it begs the question of what takes a good leader, and what are the skills you need. Like, just because you are the heir or a warrior does not necessarily make you a good warrior, and it looks at what does. So, and this book has a lot of great battle scenes, and the male characters are complex and really interesting. And I did hear that the second book, The Spider, improves upon a lot of things from the first book. I like the political turmoil that Roper has to deal with, and how he has to prove his worth. He has to earn it, their loyalty, and we see all the different things he has to do that, the behind the scenes, and, you know, not just the battle, being in battle and proving he's a good warrior, but also the stuff he needs to prove that he's a stable warrior. Like, he gets a wife, for instance, from another, to form an alliance with a neighboring kingdom. against the Southerners. Now, that brings me to the biggest problem I had is the female characters. They don't have, they have agency in a way, like, they make their own choices, but there wasn't enough of the female characters, They were mostly provoking the male characters on their journey and pushing, and like, the woman who becomes Roper's wife, she ends up being, like, poisoned at one point, and, she gets pregnant, of course, with his heir, which was the main goal, which was his goal, to get a wife, to have an heir, if something happens to him, and, so both the two female leads are secondary characters, and it's kind of like, I want to see a fantasy, and this is fantasy, yes, there's some horror, historical undertones, but this is a fantasy world, and I want to see these women become warriors too, and prove that they are warriors. Like, you don't have to make a woman not be a warrior. You can have a female warrior and still have her be feminine at the same time, and of course, this race probably doesn't have a lot of, the women are probably, like, tough, and maybe even, like, what we consider tomboys. But yeah, they were just characters that got the male characters going. But it was still really fun. I enjoyed it. It was something a little different for me to read, and I can't wait to read The Spider. Like I said, I'm gonna get, now that March is over, I can make it online purchase. Although I still gotta be careful because, like I said, I want to stick to my budget and try not to go over budget, although I might have already for March. I don't know. I haven't added up the amount of money I spent at the used bookstore, because even though used bookstores are not a lot, it still adds up. So I have to see how much, because there are 3 books I'm gonna get when I finally go, to either Book Depository or Thrift Books or Book Outlet, because I want to try to make sure I try some of the other book sites as well. Okay, so there was that. Okay, so the next book I don't have, and I'm just going to talk about this in one fell swoop, and that is A Court of series, A Court of Thorns and Roses. But like I said, guys, I have a pet peeve about how authors will just name the series after their first book, and I am sure it's hard to come up with a name, believe me. I mean, I haven't even written a book myself, so I don't know, and I'm sure it is very difficult, and sometimes titles are more catchier than others. Like, the Game of Thrones rolls off the tongue more, and you can turn it into an acronym, so it's easier to say, and no, these are not my acronyms. Thank you very much. I had someone say that to me, it was like, I come up with these acronyms. Like, no, I don't come up with these acronyms. But, so it's, I get that sometimes certain titles in a game of, something like a Game of Thrones is a lot more catchy. But either way, it's still kind of a pet peeve when you just call it the name of your first book. So in case you don't know, A Court of Thorns and Roses is one of Sarah J. Maas's one of her more famous series. It's kind of what really got her on the map, I think. Because she would it got fairy people, even though fairy stories already existed. Like, you had Holly Black, I think she wrote fairy stories before Sarah J. Maas. But I think this really got people to notice fae a lot more. But this started out as a trilogy, but then she since expanded it. The series, she wrote a novella after she finished out the arc of the first trilogy, and then she started writing about other characters in this world in another book. And I don't know if that's going to be a trilogy, and I don't know what she's going to do after, but I will see. So the first one, in case you've been living under a rock, this series starts with Freya, our main character. The first book is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Freya, it's her 2 sisters, Elaine and Nesta, and their father was a former merchant who lost all his money. So now they're poor, and Freya has to go out because she's a really skilled hunter. She goes out and brings them food and also sells the meat that they're not eating. And so she kind of is the provider of the family. And their dad's kind of like given up. Is basically given up on, sits there feels sorry for himself. Now, their home, where their village is, it's on the border of the wall that separates them from the Fey lands of Prithia. And so one day when Freya's hunting, she shoots what appears to be some kind of beast or a wolf or something. And it turns out that this wolf is an actual Fey. And she tries to dismiss, ignore it, but she kind of anticipates that someone is going to come for her, and the Fey Lord of the court where this Fey that she killed comes from, the Spring Court, shows up as a beast and offers and wants her to pay for what she did by killing his own kind. Instead of killing Freya, he says she has to come live with him for the rest of her life. Her family will be taken care of and provided for, although she doesn't know that for sure until he eventually tells her. And she has to live in the Fey world for the rest of her life. And that guy, that Fey Lord, is Tamlin of the Spring Court. He's the High Lord of the Spring Court. And the mystery of it all is that they are wearing masks on their faces. She cannot see what he looks like. She also meets one of the High Lords of the Autumn Court, Lucian, who is friends with an emissary for Tamlin's court. And you find out later in the series that whole a little bit more about that relationship. And like I said, this is Beauty and the Beast retelling, so of course there's a curse involved, but Freya doesn't find out about that until later. You find out that she does find out, but she doesn't realize that she's maybe the one that can break it. She finds out there's this queen, this tyrannical queen, Amarantha, ruling the kingdoms, and that she put this curse on them, and now they are forced to wear these masks on their faces. And you find out that Tamlin has to win Freya's love, like in Beauty and the Beast. Even though she hates its guts, and has always been told her whole life that they are bad. They are evil. And they've done nothing to humans but torture them. And then we have the second book, A Court of Mist and Fury, which picks up where the first one left off, where you have Freya. In the climax of the first book, she had to work with this other Fae, the Fae of the Night Court, of the High Lord of the Night Court, Rhysand, and made a deal with him that he would help her, but every month for a week, she has to live with him. And he marks her with this tattoo and with an eye, and it turns out he uses that to keep an eye on her. And he ends up, and because of what happened in the first book of the climax, she is going through PSTD. She is having nightmares, and she knows that Tamlin is going through some shit too, but he won't talk to her. He keeps sweeping everything under the rug and makes her focus on preparing for their wedding day. And meanwhile, he is dealing whatever he's dealing with, and he won't talk to her. And he's very overprotective of her, to the point of keeping her locked in, even when she's begging him to let her free. And she's just really falling apart and having anxiety attacks. And so, which I love how in this, one of the things I had always loved in the second book, and I still love, is that we get to see the character going through PSTD. Like in most fantasy stories, yes, you have a little bit of the aftermath of the big epic battle, but you don't get to see the characters progressing, how they deal with the aftermath. We don't see them a lot of fantasy doesn't always explore PSTD, and you would think they would, because characters go through a lot of shit, especially at a really young age. You would think in YA, and not whether it's YA or adult, that you would see that. And I am starting to see that a little bit more. But I mean, like, take Game of Thrones, for instance. Those are Song of Ice and Fire series. Those kids are very young in the book. They look a little bit older in the show, but they're very young so you would think, granted, they live in a world where they're used to that, so maybe that's why they're not going through PSTD themselves, because they're so used to all this horror. But, like, I mean, the Stark children in that series are very sheltered until their father gets his head chopped off. So you would think that they would want to explore that a little bit more in fantasy. Even if it's a YA, like, you could still include that in YA without it being too much for a young reader. I mean, like, so I really love how they explore that with Freya. And then, So she ends up going. He ends up rescuing her because she starts to have a panic attack and freaks out and doesn't want to get with the wedding. He ends up hearing her cries, even though she didn't say them out loud. And he brings her. That's the first time he comes to, because he had, when the story starts, it's been months, and he has to come to call for her to keep her promise. But then he finally shows up after she has this panic attack and freaks out and realizes, oh my god, I can't get married. I'm not ready for this. And he rescues her in a way. And even though she's still pissed off that he interrupted it, and Tamlin was like, you're not taking her. And the second time one of his own rescues her and gets her out of there is actually another time when she has a panic attack, because he's like, she begs him to let her out. And to let her out of the house for her to go out in the fresh air she can breathe. And he's like, nope, you're too fragile. And and the events that happen at the end of the book, she gets a lot of power in the end of the book. That's all spoilers I'm gonna say, although most people probably read the series by now if you were interested in that series. She gets all the power, and he's like, she needs to defend herself. She doesn't come after her. She doesn't know how to defend herself. And Tamlin's solution is, oh, keep her locked up because I can protect her. She's my fragile little doll. I must keep up in the ivory tower. And she begs him. She is freaking out. She is on her knees, like, having a panic attack. And he doesn't listen. He just uses his power and keeps her blocked in. And, Lucien just walks away. She trusted him, and he just walks away. And it's one of Rhysand's comes to rescue her and get her out of there. Because she is, she's freaking out. She's, like, sunk into herself. So, and she ends up helping, she ends up allying with him because war is looming with an old enemy that has returned. And wants to take Prithia back. And so she helps him prepare for war, and he helps her heal. He actually helps her heal. And I loved Rhysand's development. I know that people don't like Rhysand, and people will probably point out the faults that why Freya, there's some people who will still don't like him and will point out the faults and point out why he's not much better, but I think he's improvement compared to Tamlin. And I do think Tamlin, if they had therapy in this world, Tamlin would need it to talk about his anger issues and control issues and his temper. And like I said, I think Freya and Rhysand were more compatible and really connected on another level and understood each other. I said this is a Hades Persephone retelling, so I'm sure you can guess what happens. And it's just like Rhysand's development was so cool, and I liked meeting his family. Cassian and Azriel and Mor and Amren were such fun characters, and so both were interesting in their own ways. I mean, all four were interesting in their own ways. You get more of her family. They play a bigger part in the second book, and we really get to know them as like Elaine and Amren as individuals, because then their father is not in the picture in the second book. And I like how we get to explore, now we go beyond the Spring Court and explore more of the world, not just the Night/Court of Dreams, but we explore, we get a little glimpse of the Autumn Court, and then we get the Summer Court, I think it's the Summer Court. And I hope when she continues to write in this world, we get more and more of the different parts of Prithia. And we also see some of the High Lords a lot more, the other High Lords, and we get a lot more of that in the third book, which is continues the wars looming ahead. They're preparing for battle, and Freya, after, in the second book, ended on such a cliffhanger, even reading it, listening to it again, still, I was like yelling, but like, no, you Tamlin, you idiot, because Tamlin, of course, makes some dumb move, because he, thinks, oh, Freya's under a spell, I have to save her. Even though she wrote him this goodbye note, he still feels like, oh, it's not her, she's under his influence. Although, Rhysand did play up his own reputation, so he made sure people saw to protect his people, But still, I guess you can't entirely blame Tamlin for thinking that Freya was under Rhysand's spell and all that, because he played Rhysand, made you think he was a bad guy. And but that as I always say, that cliffhanger was worth what she does in the third book. The game she plays, how she manipulates and sabotages Tamlin. That was so much fun, that first part. And I actually really love the third book. You know, I know a lot of people don't love the third book. And I still had some problems with it, but I had fun with it. You know, I like seeing them prepare for war. And we continue to get even more of her sisters and see what happens with them and after what happened at the end of the second book. And there is a lot of sexy times in the whole throughout the series. I know a lot of people don't love that. I don't really care personally. But it is funny listening to it. It's been funny listening to it in the on the audiobook. It's very entertaining. But for me, it's more bothersome when I actually get the visual. So if this ever, I still want this to be adapted, but if I see this on screen, I hope that there's a lot of lovely music to go along with it, because I don't need to hear all that stuff. But yeah, this is a very adult series. The marketing people may as well just make a new adult section in the library. I don't know why they're not doing it. Like, they tried to, and then they just gave up. It's like, why? Why don't you there are plenty of books because, I mean, in fact, there's a lot of YA authors that are transitioning to adult, so it's like, why don't you because, that way it's easier for people to transition into adult books. Like, why don't you just make a new adult category where they're not, like, old people, but they're like, legally, they just became adults. So they're old enough to, curse and talk about sex and, like, have violent, and you don't have to sugarcoat things anymore. Like, just make it a new adult section, because this series, along with, like Throne of Glass, her other series, and, like, I imagine, her new one, and, the House of Night series, like, Holly Black's latest, the, was it the Prince? I cannot remember what it's called. I read it, but I haven't continued with it. But, that one, and then The Magicians feels more like new adult. New adult, where it's adult, but it's not, like, completely there yet. Why don't they just need to make a new adult category? And then, so I read all three of those, and then I read A Court of Frost and Starlight. I keep saying read, but I know people will, because there are people that will get all like, no, you did not physically read it. It doesn't count. So, just let you know, I listened to it. I also listened to A Court of Frost and Starlight, which is a more fluff piece. It's kind of the aftermath of ACOWAR, where it's seen where the characters are now and how they're dealing with after the war, how they're coping. So it's a lot more fun and fluff. Like, they're preparing for the winter solstice ceremony, where they give gifts to each other, and so Freya's dealing with that. But then there's also, like, Nesta is even more of a bitch in that one, but you do learn at the end why she's being even extra bitchy this time, why she's just being plain cold to everybody, even to Elaine, who the two of them had a lot stronger bond while Freya was gone. So it was more fun and fluffy, and I was a little nervous about that because I've heard some things about that one, but I actually kind of enjoyed it. I had fun with it. I like seeing them just going through their daily lives and just dealing with what happens next and after, and it's a good transition into her next part of the series, which is Nesta and Cassian's story. But yeah, it's a fun trilogy, I'm not big on I don't read a lot of romance, and I don't read, like, paranormal and fantasy romance that a lot, but I do, sometimes, if I'm in the right mood, I will still enjoy it. And I already love the series anyway, so that's probably another thing. Okay, so next, those I read, the first two I read in January, and then I didn't get to ACOWAR until March, I think, and then I just finished A Court of Frost and Starlight. So So I didn't read them and I didn't listen to them in March, I don't think. In February. So then The Time Machine by H.G. Wells is a fantasy classic, and as I said in my review, I read this years ago in probably middle school, like 8th grade, and I was probably at the best time, because, but I definitely like it a lot better this time around. It was a lot more interesting, posed a lot of interesting questions about what will happen to the human race, like where will we be in the future. So it presents a lot of interesting ideas on that. I found his relationship with the not the Morlocks, but that was another thing. I wish we had got more of the Morlocks. In this one, we really didn't get as much as like the movie adaptation from 2003. They did a lot more with the Morlocks than this book did. In fact, we don't meet them till like later on, like closer to the end of the book. Let me see if I can. I'm trying to find the name of that other group. It was interesting that they did kind of a 2 narrator thing where they started with one narrator, learning about the time traveler, and he's observed, when he's visiting him, but then the time traveler takes over when we get into his story, which makes sense. I'm trying to find the name of those people, like creatures. It's like one of these things where once I see it, it's gonna be like, oh, duh. Can't remember what those creatures were called. But the other group of humans, because you have humans divided into, like, you have the Morlocks, and then you have this other group, which I always forget what they're called. Eloi. The Eloi, that's what they're called. The Eloi. The Morlocks live underground. They're very advanced, but they don't like really talk, and they're more savage and animal-like, while you have the Eloi, who are more peaceful, but they're very naive. They don't know a lot about the world. And they look to the time travelers. He's fascinating to them. He becomes like a teacher to them, and he teaches them. It's like starting over with the human race with the Eloi. It's just interesting to see these two groups in his comparison to the class system with the two groups. And his relationship with Weena was kind of cute, I mean, she looked to him as a teacher, but he saves her life, and she clings to him because of that, and she's very protective of him, and she's constantly worried about him. Now, I think the 2003 adaptation added a little more romance between him and Weena, but he also ends up having his own, his motivation is a little different because of he loses his love, and he tries to stop that from happening in the 2003 adaptation, but that's not part of the original story. And it was really good. It's not like the best thing ever, but I still really enjoyed it. It was a very thought-provoking book, I think. And actually, oh crap, sorry about that, guys. My ring light just accidentally turned it off when I threw my book down, which I know should not do that. Oh, wait. Okay, I think I did more than that. Okay, I don't know why it's not working. Sorry, you guys. I just don't understand what just happened. Okay. I don't know why this is not doing anything. Oh, that's why. The little switch. That's what happened. The little switch on my little Sorry about that. The little switch on where I put all the plugs in. Okay, so then I ended up being in a more. I figured since I was kind of in a time travel sci-fi mood, I decided to pick a book I got for Christmas. Which is a nonfiction. We Don't Need Roads, the Making of Back to the Future trilogy. So if you are a fan of Back to the Future, you might like this. You would probably really enjoy this by Cassine Gaines. This is the history of how they made Back to the Future. It's one of my favorite sci-fi movies. It's kind of the movie that introduced me to the sci-fi genre, at least in film format. It's so cool. Like, there are some things I already knew, but this really those things I already knew. It kind of takes a deep dive into that stuff and explores it a lot more. Introduces that stuff, explaining the more details on it, and you really get a deep dive into he really does a deep dive into everything. And I'm impressed that he's able to interview some of these actors that he did, because he tried to go through their agents and they were reluctant to let him interview them, which I don't know why, and I think it's stupid. Like, what you think if this is a professional, not all the. Granted, there are some situations where they end up disappointing you, like recently with Brandon Sanderson, but not him, but he got interviewed by a journalist from internet. I think it was an internet site, news magazine or something, Wired, and the guy ended up basically I don't know. I didn't read the article itself, but not make Brandon look good. He kind of make fun of him in a way. So, but like the people like Elliot Brooks and Daniel Green do a better, explanation of that. But anyway, this was such a really cool deep dive, getting to know this, how this movie was made, all the secrets, all the gossip, like how the process, the process of it all, like, was really cool, and it was just fun as a fan. So this is definitely more of a book for if you are a fan of Back to the Future, then check out this book if you haven't yet. It's very informative and kind of fun. Like, you can tell he's a very passionate fan. Okay, so after that, the next book I finished was, so then we have the horror book that I don't have that I ended up already donating, and that is Black Mouth by Ronald Malfi. And I think if you were a Stephen King fan, you would like this, along with the last book I read, which I had just finished. This is basically about our main character, Jamie Warren, and when he and his friends, I don't remember their names. I wish I could remember their names. Mia Thomason, that's one of them, and then I can't remember the other guy, the other kid. They were kids, they were in Black Mouth, and Black Mouth kids have a reputation that's not a positive one, and it's him and his friends, and then also his younger brother, who is a kid with, I think he has disabilities. I don't know, the book doesn't really say what they are, but he's basically in a position where he has to take care of his brother, and his dad's abusive and has a bit of a temper and is alcoholic. And then he has his two best friends. One of them is a black kid who has that, where you have white patches on your skin to the point where your skin almost looks like chalk white. And he's bullied and made fun of for that. And then you have Mia, who her parents died in a car accident, so she's very obsessed with death and corpses. And then she's living with her, I think, uncle and his partner. So he in like a trailer or something, and they have she's very poor, and so the four of them encounter this mysterious magician. He's a bum, he lives on the streets, but he claims to know real magic, and he offers to teach them magic, particularly card tricks, and then he will take them to the well where the real magic is. And they spend all the time with him as he teaches them card tricks. But then one night when he says, "Are you ready to go to the well? I need one of you to do something to prove your worth to me that you are ready to go to the well." And he he summons up Jamie, and Jamie has to kill his brother. And he's told that the magician can bring his brother back from the dead and he will be improved. But Jamie cannot bring himself to do it. And Mia even volunteers to do it because she is really into this and wants to learn this magic. But even she can't do it. And so when they're adults, they all have left Blackmouth. But then Jamie gets a call. His mother has committed suicide, and his brother is found naked, wandering the streets. So he has to come back home to take care of his brother, and he wants to find out what happened to him and his friends with that guy. And him and his friends want revenge on that guy that took advantage of them, because after he ends up abandoning them. And Jamie actually witnessed something that was a little gave supernatural vibes. But his friends, Mia, and I wish I remember the other guy's name, are like, oh, you were just imagining. He was just messing with you. So it really deals with, it's again another story where I see that a lot in these kinds of fantasy, sci-fi, horror stories where it's like, is there really something supernatural going on, or was it just in his head? Like kind of similar to the unreliable narrator situation. So it's really about the bond between the brothers, between these friends, and them dealing with the grief and, being trauma, and how they each handle it very differently. Like, Jamie wants to sweep it under the rug, Mia wants revenge, and, Clay's his name. Clay wants justice. And wants to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else, because they find out that the magician, is back. And he's gone after someone else. But the weird thing is, he looks exactly the same. So, like I said, there's a supernatural undertone of, is this really, they're really supernatural elements, or is this all in their heads? Is Jamie, so psychologically damaged, she's imagining that this guy is something supernatural? And the last book I read also dealt with the idea of, is this really supernatural or not? The last book I read. And it was just such a compelling read. I wanted to keep going. I wanted to find out, because I firmly believe that there was something supernatural going on. Because that's because I always want something supernatural to be. But there was a little bit of, is there really something going on? Or is Mia right? It's all in his head, and it's his way of dealing, his way of coping. I like the relationship between him and his brother, that it's tense. And there is a little bit of resentment, but they still love each other, and he still feels loyal to his younger brother, especially because, this kid has a lot to deal, he doesn't understand. And it also deals with the fact that Jamie could potentially get rid of the burden of having to take care of his brother, but he doesn't. He doesn't walk away from his brother. He stays loyal to him. Like I said, it does use the unreliable narrator trope, but he's an alcoholic. Well, I said he was an alcoholic. Yeah, because he does go to AA meetings. So I like how it does, but I think it's a new spin, because like I said, it's more about, was there really supernatural? Did he see something weird and magical with this guy? Or maybe it was just in his head. And I think this one, along with the other one I'm talking about at the end, have very much Stephen King vibes to them. So if you're a Stephen King fan, you might like these. So that's Blackmouth by Ronald Malfi, and I'll mention the other one at the end. Okay, so next is The Physician, and this was one of those books that at first I thought, oh, did I already get rid of it? But then I remembered I gave it to my mom because I figured she might like it, even if it's a really long book. And this is one of the 500 plus page books that I was proud to say I finished it. And that is Noah Gordon's The Physician, which I started this 2 years ago, I have to admit. This is about a young man who, his name is, Rob Cole. He's an English boy, and it's just him and his parents and his siblings. He has a lot of siblings, but his parents get killed. And so he and all his siblings get apprenticed off, and he gets apprenticed to a barber surgeon. He's only 11, I think, and 11 or 10. And he learns how to be a surgeon, and also how to do things like juggling and putting on performances and stuff. And it turns out he actually has this gift. He can actually see if a person is going to die or not. But he's told by the barber surgeon not to say anything, to shove that gift inside. But over time, watching all these people, he realizes he wants to actually be able to heal people and help them. So years later, as an adult, after the barber surgeon has passed, he learns of a school in Persia that teaches you to be a real physician. It's a very prestigious school where a famous physician went to. But the problem is that he is Christian, and they do not allow Christians in this school. So he decides, after talking to a Jewish doctor, that he's going to pretend to be Jewish. So this is his life story. This is how he gets to this famous school, and the people he meets, the people who become father figures to him, his first love, finding love, learning about the different religions. There is some hatred towards and prejudice towards Jews and Christians in this book. There's a lot of that. But I also we get to kind of see him learn, and we learn along with him about these religions and this culture in Persia, and learning medicine a little bit. And now there's a lot of medical stuff, and descriptions of, people getting injured or being sick and getting diseases and all that. There's a bit of a found family element. I like seeing his relationship with the other boys he goes to school with. I was worried there was going to be a little bit of two boys fighting to see who's the best surgeon, but they quickly resolve that. But of course there is still conflict between him and his new brothers. So it's long because it's his life story. But it's very slow going. But it was really worth learning about and spending time with Rob and learning about his world and seeing him become a physician and fulfill his dreams. Now, it is part of a series, but I'm probably not going to continue. And there was a movie adaptation of this book, but it never came to the United States. So that's a bit of a disappointment. And I don't know if I want to risk going through the illegal methods of trying to get it. I'm not going to do that. But yeah, this was really good and a very heartwarming story. Unless it is a bit slow, but it's still really good. Okay, and then so after that, that's when I listened to Court of Mist and Furies. I've already talked about that. And then we have Crimson Campaign. So this is the second book in the series I finished that I own. So I'm not going to really talk much. It takes place, not sometime after the first, not too long after the first book, where, dang it, I cannot remember the characters' names. Thomas is on the run with his army. He's been chased out. He's forced to go into enemy territory. Daniel is dealing with the fact that he attempted to kill a god and survived. And our detective character is trying to save his wife and children from this Lord Vetus guy. So a lot of stuff's going on. It's a little not as action-packed as the first one. Well, actually about the same. Now that I think about it, it's kind of the same amount, so never mind. We also deal with how people have different opinions on the situation. Some people wanted to be liberated, but there are people that didn't and think Thomas had made a mistake. And certain things come out in the open in this one, certain issues that need to be resolved. And I really enjoyed this. Like I said, I should have done a review of the whole trilogy like Daniel Green did, but I didn't. I did individual reviews, so. But it probably would have been better, but it was still really great second book. And then I did finish the series and read the third book later on, so I'll talk about that in a little bit. Gotta move this because I don't want what happened last time to happen again. Okay, so after this is when I read some of my short stories, and that is the collective works of Oscar Wilde. So I read the stories from this were the Lord Portrait of W.H. Mr. W.H. That one was more about like who might have been the muse for Shakespeare, and I think it was interesting, but it felt more like explaining things, like explaining what the character found out. There wasn't a lot of a story. I mean, it was a cool idea. No, I will give it that. Okay, so Lord Seville's Crime by Oscar Wilde. I think this is the one where the guy is, sorry. I don't want things to accidentally push the button again. Surge Protector, I think that's what it's called, Surge Protector. I think this is the one where the guy finds out he can't marry his fiancée unless he commits some crimes, and it's funny his response to it, how he just takes this and goes with it. It's kind of his take on Oscar Wilde's take on Gothic literature. So I thought that was really funny. The Model Millionaire. This is about like a guy who his friend is an artist and he decides to pose a guy for a portrait, a guy that's a beggar, and our narrator's not like that. He doesn't appreciate that, but there's a little bit of surprise towards the end. That one was another one that was kind of funny too. And then you have, oh, okay, so I only read 3 from this one. I want to say I think that's it. Okay. And then we have Ruin of Kings. This is another one that I feel proud that I read and finished. This one was really good. I know a lot of people are confused by the narrative structure of this one because you basically have our main character, Kieran, and his story. He tells his story from one point while he's in prison at the beginning of the book, and you have his captor telling his story but from another point of view. So that, I know that structure is a little confusing for a lot of people, but I love the world building of this world, and I like how it's this young Kieran is part of this horrible family, and he's kind of struggling with that in his identity, and he doesn't want to be like his family. And there was, at one point, I love the old man, the dragon that they call the old man. That was really fun. He becomes because Kieran has this ability to sing really well. He has this golden voice, so the old man becomes obsessed and wants to own him to sing for him. I really I thought that was funny in a very dark kind of way. And just this world and art, and Kieran and his journey, and he's young and naive, but he makes a really great main character. Now I do believe that the next book is not is no longer his story, which is cool with me because which is fine. But I'm definitely curious where he's going to go from here. But yeah, this was really fun. I really like this. Sorry, I wish I could say more, but I can't. That doesn't mean I didn't. I loved it, but I have trouble summing up my thoughts, and I don't want this to be super long because it's almost 2:00, and I want to eat something for lunch. So, and I also planned on taking a walk this afternoon. Okay, so next is another fantasy, which I can explain this one a lot better than that one, and that is Victory Equals. I think it's book 5 in the Timur series. So we're picking up where the first one left off, Empire of Ivory, where where Temeraire and Will Lawrence are convicted of treason because they end up selling the cure to the French, and they are the enemy. And so they're actually separated. We get Temeraire's perspective for once. We only hear on second. We never really get Temeraire's perspective. We hear about it, but we never really are inside Temeraire's head in this one. And in this one we get to see him in a leadership position, although he's not the best leader because he still is very stubborn, doesn't listen to anyone, except for maybe Lawrence. And he kind of is just questions everything, which in military it's like no questions asked, do what you're told kind of mentality. And we get a lot more dragons with really fun personalities, and we get more wild dragons that aren't controlled by the military. And it really like puts we really see Lawrence in this new position of, I committed a crime. I did something good to help these innocent dragons, but it's still betraying my country, and it puts his friends, in a difficult position because, he's like, they want to be loyal to him, but they are also, they have to answer to a higher power. And so it really kind of puts them in a situation of like, it was right to save these other dragons, but at what cost? But the thing is that these are very light-hearted reads, and yes, there's tension, but the only problem with these books is that, that I didn't think about until I saw someone else's review of the series, that it is true that you don't have to worry about the main characters. Their stakes are not so high that you're going to have to worry about them. Like, they'll survive. They have plot armor, basically. So I think it's more of a fun series that's a great start for the fantasy genre, and it's very easy to read, and I really like, it's a great first start to dragon books if you're getting into dragons. It is 9 books, but they're very easy to read and very quick to read, I think. But yeah, this was really, really fun. I like seeing Tamara on his own for a period of time. And dealing with the consequences of, yes, I did the right thing, but morally, but, I have to answer to these other people, so it's like, was it really the right thing? So I'm eager to see what happens next with the characters. And then so next, I reread Persuasion by Jane Austen. This is a second chance romance. The main character, Anne, who is the oldest heroine of Jane Austen. She's in her late 20s, and years ago, she fell in love with this sailor, Wentworth. But her godmother, Lady Russell, and her dad were like, this guy's not good enough for you, you can do better. So she's persuaded to reject him, to turn him down, even though he proposed, from when he proposes to her. And she doesn't see him again for years, and she clearly still is in love with him and has not moved on since. And he comes back, and he's a captain now. He's doing a lot better. He has a lot more money. And he comes back, and she realizes that she's still in love with him, but she doesn't know if he's still in love with her or if he's forgiven her or not. And people are speculating that he's going to marry this other girl. So Anne is kind of forced to watch and interact with them. Meanwhile, her family, the Elliots, are in financial straits because her dad is a little bit reckless with the money, and they're forced to sell their house and rent it out, and they have to move to Bath. Her sister, but oh my god, I cannot stand her sisters. They were such brats and bitches, and her father didn't care. She was very invisible in her family, was forced to kind of take care of the family. And the only person who ever took care of her was Lady Russell. So, she really does have good intentions, I think. But she's still kind of caught up in her own beliefs and prejudices as a wealthy woman. And of course, in this world, you gotta marry well off financially, or you're gonna end up in the poorhouse. You're gonna end up in a situation like, Fanny's family, in Mansfield Park, where they basically had to send her to live with relatives, because they couldn't afford her along with her siblings. And, there's also the subplot of the person to inherit their family's fortune, a Mr. Elliot, a male cousin, and he kind of charms his way to the back into their lives and to Anne's life. And there's speculation that her and Mr. Elliot might get married. But Anne does realize quickly that she doesn't love him. She doesn't love Mr. Elliot. These Jane, again, just like Jane Austen's other novels, this is really fun and like not a lot of stuff going on, but still like it's a satire on her world. I really like Anne is probably one of her most mature main character. And it's the romance of the second chance romance is really sweet. And I definitely appreciate a lot more having read it now 3 times. And it's just one of, and I think a lot of people love this one. It's a favorite, and yeah, I don't have a lot other to say. I really enjoyed it. It was fun. I'm slowly loving it more and more. Okay, and then we have after that I read Salem's Lot by Stephen King. So this is his take on the vampire story, and it is a reread for me because I read this years ago. But I didn't remember a lot of it, and I did do an individual review, so I don't have a lot to say in this wrap-up about it. Basically, our main character is a writer, Ben Mears, and when he was a kid, he lived in Jerusalem's Lot and had been to impress this other group of boys. As a kid, he goes into the haunted Marston house, and he witnesses something that really freaks him out and traumatizes him. So years later, as an adult and now a successful writer, he comes back to the town and wants to write about it. But he finds out that he's not just dealing with the ghost of the Marston house, he's dealing with vampires. Because a vampire, he doesn't realize it just yet, but a vampire has bought the Marston house and slowly is feeding on everybody in this town and turning them into one of the undead. Again, creepy town. Like, there's his take on vampires. Like I said, if you did not like Twilight, you probably like this better because this is a lot closer to the more monstrous, creepy vampires that most people love. It's just, I liked Ben, and, I thought he was a good main character, relatable and likable. But my favorites were Mark, the minister, I cannot remember his name, Callahan, and then the teacher. I really liked them. I was okay with the doctor character, but Mark and the teacher were very keen on believing everything. Callahan was a little skeptical at first, but then he believed after witnessing some stuff. I think Mark's probably one of the more relatable characters for a lot of people. He's into a lot of, this kind of, he's like, in fact, he's the first to believe. It has small town creepiness, the skeletons of a small town. It was really good and very intense. A slow build up to the final confrontation with the vampire. So the only thing I remember was the whole encounter with Father Callahan. That's the thing I remember the most. But as I read it all, kind of came back to me. So this was a really great take on vampires. I think a lot of people feel, I read this one. Please read this one. I think you would like this, especially if you had issues with Twilight. Okay, and then we have this is when I read the third and final book in the Powder Mage trilogy. I guess the Rostov, I got this from, Thrift Books, so it's an old edition. It's a lot older and been well read. I like how it resolves all the issues. There were a couple things that surprised me, the directions I went, and I was like, I liked it, but then on the other hand, I was thinking, why did they, all of a sudden, like, throw this in there, and why did they not do this instead? It was still a good ending, but there were some things that were a little confusing. Like, why didn't you go this way instead of this way? Like, I love the different groups of magic users. The powder mages, and I cannot remember what that one magic system where that's kind of like hoodoo magic, and then you have those people that are beyond, that do like they're just super powerful. I can't think of them at the moment. It's been so long, but I did do a review. So, but yeah, this was a really good ending. A really, just a really fun story, and I like how, and the whole powder mage stuff is really, like, all the magic systems in this were very new to me. I like how, like, Tamlin and Thomas's, or Tamlin, Tennille and Thomas's relationship, it's starting to mend, but it's not completely on the fence, completely fixed. I like how the two, our main female lead, she gets to really shine in this one and is really badass. Although I can admit that whole thing that happens in the second book, what we discover about her, was kind of a curve, was kind of a surprise. Like, that felt like it came out of left field, but it still worked. It was still fun, and it really helped her shine. So there's that. And then after that was, then I read, this is kind of when March happened. I read High Rise by J.G. Ballard. And again, I only read this because Tom Hiddleston's in the adaptation. But this was really, again, another thought-provoking book. You have this guy, well, it starts with Tom Hiddleston's character, and what's his name? Let me see. I also feel very proud of the review I did on this book. I just hope a lot of people, because I know, this is not my usual. Robert Lang, he is he works at the college, and I think he's like a writer, like he's a teacher of English or something. I don't remember. But I mean, like I said, I did a review, so the review probably is a lot better than what I'm going to say here. And he has moved in with the building where his sister, this new high rise, where his sister and her husband live. And this is a place where, it's where people start to, like, lose. They are more wild and free, and you have his perspective, and then you have a few other characters. This one guy who wants to do a documentary on the high rise, see how people survive, because this has so much technology that's malfunctioning to the point where everything stops working, and they give into their primal impulses. And then you also have the perspective of the guy who made this building. And it's just really fascinating to see these people just slowly lose their humanity, and just like, as you can see, I'm really fascinated by those kinds of stories. And how, even though they have, they're very savage and animal-like, these people, and it's really good and worth checking out if you like that kind of stuff. Like I said, I feel very proud of my review that I made for this book. And then this is when I read my next set of short stories from Skeleton Crew. I'm not done with this one yet, but I'm almost done. Skeleton Crew by Stephen King. And from this one, I read Word Processor of Gods, which that one was really unsettling. It's this guy who is given by his nephew this computer that he handmade, and it has the capability of making things disappear and reappear. It's really creepy and unsettling, and it's all about wish fulfillment and how, can you, like, if you were given the chance to change your life and give yourself what you always wanted, would you do it, even at the expense of others? And then after that, I read The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands. This was another creepy one. This is about, like, this is a story within a story where this guy is telling the story about this man he met who had traveled to India, and after committing a bit of a faux pas and murdering someone accidentally, even though it was that someone's own fault, So is it really murder? And he ends up getting cursed. And he is freaking out and won't shake hands, won't come into contact with anybody because of this curse. So that was a little creepy, and it was again another story was like, is this really going on, or is it just in this guy's head? Okay, and then after that was Beach World, where these two guys end up in a plane crash. One of them slowly goes crazy, and the other one is trying to keep them both insane and alive. And I thought that was just okay. It wasn't. I'm very, I pick you out my survival stories. And then Reaper's Images was another creepy one where this guy, this guy owns an antique shop, and then an acquaintance of his, they're talking. He doesn't think very highly of the guy who owns the shop owner, and our narrator fears the Reaper. Like, he sees images of the Reaper, and the shop owner doesn't believe him. So that was a little creepy as well. So yeah, so I don't have a lot to say. I liked some of them. I definitely liked these ones a little bit more than the previous ones so far. I feel like with short story collections, it's a hit or miss. Like, some of the stories you might like, some of the stories I like, some of them I don't. Some of them, like, I don't hate them, I think they're just okay. So yeah, I read all those. And then I read another Stephen King. That is The Wastelands. Again, another situation where there was a lot of stuff I didn't remember about this. And the one thing I did remember does not come until towards the end of the book. Where, it's some time later, Roland has taught Eddie, Dean, and Suzanne how to be gunslingers. Suzanne is the better one at it than Eddie is. They're traveling through Midworld, and they find themselves, they're in this forest with a guardian bear that decides to show up and go after them. And meanwhile, the gunslinger Roland is dealing with the fact that he has two memories. He has two competing memories. He has the memory of Jake and the memory of Jake not being there. And he's trying to decide which one is real and which one isn't. And he also knows, and it's slowly making him lose his mind. And he also knows that Jake is also dealing with this, if he's real. So we go back and forth between Midworld and Jake in New York City in, I think, the 70s. And Jake is, he's dealing with this as well. As Roland said, he has the dual memories, but there's a bit of resentment with him and Roland because Roland let him go, and he is desperate to get back to Roland's world. But he also, and find the door. He becomes obsessed with doors, but he also knows Roland dropped him, so he doesn't completely trust Roland. And he's like trying to, and you see him dealing with school and his dad, who's a jerk and controlling. And he keeps getting closer and closer to finding the doorway to Midworld. And there's a link between him and Eddie. Eddie might be the one that will help him get to Midworld. And he has to get there with a certain time, which brings us to our plot. One of our main other plots is that Eddie is still coping with, like, he still kind of has his brother's voice in his head, and he doesn't trust himself, doesn't think he's good enough. Like, every time, like, Eddie was good at something, like, his brother would push him down and say, wouldn't let him be good at it or mock him for it. Like, and he was really good at, like, things like wood carving and basketball. But you realize he's been kind of, like, pushing his desires aside, his skills aside for his brother. So he's dealing with really that, and that kind of comes into play with the whole story with Jake. And like I said, the whole thing I do remember was Blaine the Mono, but he surprisingly does not come till the end. There's a lot of great antagonists in this book, like the TikTok man, and I can't remember the other guy's name. They were really fun, really kind of intimidating antagonists, like characters that you don't know when they're gonna snap. type of characters. I also did a review of this one. This was a reread. Now I'm on book 4, which I've never read before. So I did put it down for a while, but I'm gonna come back to it soon. Okay, and then we have, after that one is, okay, that's when I read A Court of Wings of Ruin. Oh, and the narrator for that was Amanda Lee Cobb. I didn't talk about her. She has a nice voice. I don't have any strong feelings. I liked her. No really strong opinions. I think she did a good job. And that's Amanda Lee Cobb, if you're interested. Okay, so then I read another first book on the fantasy series, because this was one where I had all the books in the trilogy. And that is The Shadow of What Was Lost. This was another one that I think had mixed reviews. Not everybody loved it, but I loved it. It was so much fun. Our main character, Davian, he goes to this school for magic, but he hasn't been showing signs of magic, but he has shown signs of being an augur, which people fear. So he has to hide that from people. And he's already the gifted ones. That's what the magic users are called, the gifted ones. And he's already bullied enough by people that fear them as it is. To find out he's an augur will make it worse. And it turns out that one of the elders, well, first of all, the elders have come because there's a test they have to pass. And one of the elders knows that Davian is an augur, and with this, he is given this box. He gives Davian this box and tells him to go north on this mission, but he doesn't know anything else. And his friend, Weir, goes with him on this because he doesn't want him to go alone, and he worries about him. And they know that there's something going on at the border, and like an old enemy might have shown up, and Weir is extremely interested in that for some reason. So the two of them go on this quest, and they have a run-in with 2 other elders who offer to accompany them because they imply that they know more about the situation than Davian and Weir do, and they rescue this young man, Caden, but Caden has no memories. He doesn't know who he is, he doesn't know what he's capable of, but he seems to know a lot more than he realizes. And meanwhile, their friend, who I cannot remember her name, Asha, she was left behind at the school. She doesn't realize that they left, and the school is attacked, and everyone but her was killed. She's the only survivor. So the elders show up, and the same elder who gave Davian the box finds her, and when he hears what she has to say, he decides to make her what is known as a shadow. These are very scarred people, and she can no longer use the gift. And he takes her to the Duke's palace, where and she finds out there's a lot more going on. She finds out a lot, and that she becomes a spy and befriends other shadows like her. And I liked, learning about, we get a lot about augurs, so I will hope we learn more about the gifted in the next book. We learn about augurs. I like the training montage he goes through. I think that was a very different and interesting approach to that, where he actually learns about it, because he doesn't know anything, no one can really help him, but then he gets put in a situation where he comes across someone who can help him, and it kind of gives him more of an explanation of what is really going on. And then I also like the twist with Weir, and that there's more to him than meets the eye. I thought that was really cool, and it was kind of a twist on a well-known trope. Then you have our Asha, which I was worried that she wouldn't play as big of a role, but she plays a lot more bigger of a role and gets really involved in the politics of this world. Like I said, she becomes a spy, so I really appreciate that she wasn't pushed to secondary, the damsel in distress, the love interest that doesn't get to do a lot. I enjoyed that. And she has her own story and plays her own role in what's going on. I liked Caden. I liked the mystery with him. And I like the twist with his character when you find out what his deal is towards the end. I thought that was a nice surprise. And this was just a really fun world. I definitely want to know more about the different groups, like the Shadows, the Augurs, and the Gifted. I want to know more about them, and I hope we explore more of the Gifted in the next one. So that was really fun. And then after that, the next book I finished was The Emerald Storm, which is the second book in this bind up, books 3 and 4. So it's book 4. So it's hard to really sum up this book because, unless you're watching this after having watched my videos on the previous book. But in this one, we pick off, Adrian and Royce have an old ally of Royce's. He's working for the bad guys now. He's working for the enemy, and he's assassinated someone, and the pair have to go after him because he might be doing something that could be consequences for the new empire. And then we learn some stuff. Royce's little secret about his identity is revealed to more people. It's also a pirate, seafaring adventure. If you like seafaring books, whether it's pirates or not, I think you would enjoy Emerald Storm if you have not long. But you have to read books 3, 1, and 2 first. 1, 2, and 3 before you get to this one, because then it won't make sense. But yeah, if you like, I think that one would probably be book 4 would probably be your favorite if you like those kinds of stories. There's a pirate character in this, but it's only one pirate character. But then you have Royce and Adrian, so we get to go beyond the villages and the kingdom. We get to explore more of it in this story, which I really liked. I like we get to a lot more of that. And though I feel like the female characters get to do a lot more. You see how they're all strong in their own individual ways, even if they're not all fighters. And I like how they do what needs to be done, and they're all brave in their own ways. Like Modena, she has to play this role, and she's been taken away from everything she loves just to play Empress, and she's unhappy, but she does what is necessary to protect her loved ones and people that she's grown fond of and cares about. Arista gets to use a lot more magic, and she gets to be kind of a hero and help save the day. I mean, she's still growing and learning as a character. She realizes, learning the consequence of actions, and she needs to shove her own pride, and sometimes she, and what she can do to help people. And then you have the character who's, I don't remember her name, but she is being Modena's protector, and she's on the side of the bad guy, but she doesn't understand. She knows that he's a bad guy. She's scared of him, but she, just thinks, well, this is the best for the people, and, you can't blame her for some of her reactions and feeling very overprotective of Modena. And she proves to be very smart and very clever. Even if she's not a warrior, she doesn't have a lot of power, but she has some kind of power. Like, she's smart. She uses her wits, and she's been chosen to protect the Empress, so she does what she needs to do to protect her. But yeah, this series is really fun. And I really enjoy it, and I'm already excited to get to the next book, the next volume. Okay, I get 2 more books to go, and then I am done. Okay, so last 2 books. First, I read Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days. Now, I did see an adaptation of this, and it was fun at the time. I enjoyed the adaptation, but I had not read the book, so, they did change some things in the adaptation, but that's no surprise. The servant is played by Jackie Chan in the adaptation, but he's French in this book. Now, I don't know if they claim that his character is half French, but I need to watch it. This is basically about Phileas Fogg, This guy he's a bit of a loner. He keeps to himself. He stays in the house. He doesn't really go out to society. The only club he's part of is the Reform Club, and he just like lost his servant, so he hires a new one. This French guy whose name I cannot pronounce. I don't know how to pronounce it. I haven't heard it. I should have done a Google and looked at the pronunciation, because I recently discovered that, on my computer, where you can type in Google the word you're trying to find the pronunciation for, and then you could hear it and you could see how it's pronounced as well. And at one of his Reform Club meetings, they are talking about traveling the world, and he states that it takes 80 days, and they scoff at that. They don't believe him, but then he's like, you know what, I'm going to leave right now and prove to you can travel around the world in 80 days. So he takes his servant and packs only one bag, and they decide to travel around the world in 80 days. They mostly go by train and boat. I mean, I've seen some adaptation covers, some covers of the book with an air balloon, and there's really no air balloon. I mean, there's a mention of an air balloon, but there's no air balloon. They don't travel by air balloon at all. They travel by boat and train throughout and elephant, the whole story. So there's no air balloon. I don't know where they got the air balloon idea. I mean, I think they do. There is an air balloon at one point in that adaptation, but there's no air balloon in the book. And they travel all around the world, and they do end up making, a couple of detours where they get stuck in places. They're not precisely on time. And at one point in India, they save a woman from being burned because, they talk about how in their culture, some people, when their spouse is dead and they're going to burn the body, the spouse will volunteer to die with them. But in this case, this woman did not volunteer, so they save her, and she becomes their companion throughout the rest of the journey. And it provides a fun, entertaining commentary on the different cultures. Now this is a very old book, 1800s, so there's probably stuff in there that are a little dated. It's like a little, maybe prejudiced and racist elements, and it feels like a satire at times. There is a suggestion of romance, but it's not very lacking, because it's like you have the Indian woman Ayuda. I don't know if I'm saying her right. After they rescue him, she forms this attachment to Fogg and falls in love with him and becomes very protective of him and also protective of his servant. And she falls in love with him, but he doesn't really we don't see any signs of affection from him. I mean, there are a couple times when the servant, when we don't see them, we're not with them, and maybe they had these moments then, but I would have loved to see more actual moments where we see that there's affection developing on his end too, but we don't get that. We're specifically told he's very formal with her. He makes sure that she's taken care of, and he worries about her to an extent, but there's no moments of pining or anything like that. I think I've read enough of those kinds of books where they have a lot of pining that it's when they don't have it, I'm disappointed. But there wasn't anything there. There was pining on her end, but not in his, which really bugged me. I know he's a scientist and everything, and he's a very, very unemotional. He doesn't express his emotions. His unflappableness does benefit him, because I think if there were a lot of delays and they cannot control things like the weather or things that happen in those countries, that might delay them. So he was always very calm and we'll figure it out, which is probably, comes from him being a scientist, and also I think he's a scientist. And also just, it helps so he doesn't panic. And I think in this situation, panicking is not good, because then you're not clear-headed, you're not trying to find a good solution, you're just freaking out, So I think his unflappableness did benefit, but at the same time, his unflappableness is kind of at times you have no emotion? Really? You're not scared or anything? I mean, he does get angry sometimes. I also like how there was a detective that was after the Detective Fix, who sees there was a robbery in London, and the way the robber is described matches Phileas Fogg, so he spends the whole time following them. He even befriends the servant and he eventually tries to get the servant on his side after he finds out that the servant doesn't know anything about the robbery. And he thinks, oh, he's not an ally, so I can make him an ally of mine and get him away from Fogg and protect him. But the servant is very loyal and refuses to believe that he would be a robber. And so there was that, which makes me like this book a lot more than 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, because there was a lot more going on. There was an actual plot. There was adventure. There was excitement. There was like tension. The antagonist was actually antagonistic. Like the only thing that the antagonist does in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is he keeps them. He's like, you can't leave this vessel. But he doesn't even do anything that seems threatening. He just keeps them there. And, I mean, how are they going to get away anyway? They have no chance of getting out of there anyway. Like, they're under the water, so there's no way they can get out of there unless one of them can hold his breath for a really long time. So it's like, and they're traveling, this also kind of a situation where they're traveling around the world. So it's like, they can't escape anyway in that book. But yeah, there's a lot more. There's a little bit of tension, but there's a lot more excitement and tension in this book. Because you don't know if, there's a small part of me that asks, what? Maybe Phileas Fogg is the robber. But it's like, because they don't know why he's so rich. And it's also very funny. I really like when the servant goes to a meeting on one of the trains they're traveling on, a group of Mormons. They're in the U.S. at that point. I think probably like Utah or somewhere. And he's, watching this guy talk about Mormonism, and he's getting very, spiritual, and really explaining the history of Mormonism. And he's like, the servant is the last one to leave because slowly the people leave, getting bored with his preaching. And, he's like, will you, our religion save you kind of scenario? And he's like, nope, and then walks away. So we get a little history lesson on Mormonism, which, yeah, there is a bit of times where you get a little bit of a history lesson, so I'm sure that stuff can seem kind of boring for people. Like I said, this is an older adventure story, so there is parts of it that are a little slower. I find it funny how exact Phileas Fogg is, and then his exactness with money kind of gets him in a situation where he misinterprets things. And there's a bit of a scene when they're in San Francisco, I think, when they encounter, there's a political riot going on, and he encounters an American who's like, you English pig, and he's like, you American, I can't remember what the word, but that was also kind of funny too, the rivalry between the Brits and the Americans, the American and, Phileas Fogg, that was funny. And now we're best friends. So it was really good, very entertaining. I had fun with this one. I really enjoyed it. Okay, finally talking about the last book of the month, because unless I read some short stories, I'm probably not gonna get anything else written right now. But since I did this, I probably won't read any short stories. Just stick to reading Anna Karenina. The Curse of Crow Hollow, which I literally just finished. So I won't be able to talk a lot about this. So this is another small town story. You have the town of Crow Hollow, or Holler, as they call it, in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And we are told by the narrator that something happened in this town that changed it and revealed its inner demons, metaphorically speaking. So you have one night these teenagers, Scarlett, Cordelia, Hayes, and Naomi. It's Scarlett's birthday, and they decide to go to the mine, what they are told, the mines, where not far away, not too close by, is the home of Alvaretta Graves, the town witch, whose husband was murdered many years ago, and she has come to hate the town. They're celebrating her birthday, even though they're told not to go to the mines, as a dangerous place, by their parents. And we get a little bit of drama, personal drama between the characters. One of Naomi's older brother, who was in war, had recently returned. and he has shown up being like, Naomi shouldn't be here, but she's fighting him and stuff because she wants to, she wants to rebel. And so after an encounter with, with John David, Naomi's brother, who she had a crush, or Scarlet, the birthday girl, a crush on, when he ignores her, she takes off and leaves in the woods, along with this bracelet that Cordelia gave her that belonged to her mother, to Cordelia's mom. And while she's running through the woods all upset, she loses the bracelet. And somehow the bracelet, and it turns out the bracelet ended up at Alvaretta Graves' house. So the kids decide to get it back. Even though Naomi's like, no, we shouldn't do this. This is dangerous. Let's just forget about it. But of course, Cordelia doesn't want to get in trouble with her mom. So, they go and have an encounter with Alvaretta herself, who reveals that she knows them and their parents and curses them all. She takes away Cordelia's beauty and scars her face, and I think she kind of has a drooping face. She takes away Scarlet's voice, and Naomi has like a twitch. Like, she cannot control her body. And then Hayes, you don't know what happened to him just yet. You learn it later as the story progresses. And they make it back in time to church and are forced to tell their families, and all of a sudden everyone freaks out. They're like, why did you bother the witch? Like, some of the town council's like, we need to cover this up. Let's just pretend everyone's sick. Because some of the members of the town council know what happened years ago to Alvaretta's husband, who murdered him, but they don't want to say. So their solution is to cover it up and act like everyone's sick. But Naomi sends it out on the grapevine that they've encountered the witch. And slowly, over time, everyone starts to realize that they are cursed, and everyone's freaking out. Some people, like the town doctor, doesn't believe it's a curse, think it's a mass delusion because all the teenage girls also experienced the same symptoms that Scarlet, Naomi, and Cordelia had. And so, of course, some of the residents blame the teenagers. Some blame Cordelia's mom, Angela, because it was her bracelet that they went to get. And they're all like, your daughter's more scared of you than the witch. And the preacher of the town, Dave Ramsey, Naomi's father, is like, oh, it's, God's punishing us. We need to kill the witch, and it's the evil in our town. So there's a lot of religious turmoil and conflict in this story, and everyone's just trying to find out who is to blame. Everyone's blaming everyone else. The one black man in the town, Medrick, is being blamed as well. Like, someone's left a dead raccoon on his door. He's also the town, what is it called? The one who, the guy who deals with the bodies of the dead, who buries them. I cannot think of the name of that job. And he knows that because he's a black man, the white members of the community are gonna go after him and blame him for all this, because he also had the keys to get into the mines or whatever. I don't know. I cannot remember the deal with the keys. Like, where did they lead? What doors did they unlock? I don't remember. And everyone just slowly goes crazy, obsessing over this and trying to find a solution, blaming everybody. It's just a town that's slowly going mad with the hate and thinking that they are purging the world of evil and of the witch, and dealing with this curse. And the kids are blaming themselves. Like, there's the families of these teenagers get punished. Like, Hayes's, you find that Hayes got Cordelia pregnant. That's a subplot. And then also, like, he doesn't have any visual problems from this, so they think, oh, he's got off scot-free. But then you realize that he's starting to see demons in the town, and he's absolutely terrified. So you realize that is his punishment, is what in the book does talk about. We do get a lot of why each of them were punished. Each of the teenagers were punished a certain way, and what the meaning behind their punishments were. And like, if you are a Stephen King fan, I think you would enjoy this. You know, you get the whole small town vibes. Now, small towns have skeletons in their closets, and how they're not always as good and saintly as they like to. You know, once they're in a situation where they're desperate and scared, then they might lose their saintliness and commit murder, and then you also deal a little bit with PSTD as well, especially with characters like John David, who was a soldier, and how his dad is passing judgment on him, saying you've abandoned the town, you have turned to the dark side kind of mentality. And you know, he's just going through, witnessed a lot of horrible things, and the town doesn't understand that. Like, they have been out, they have never left their town, so most of the residents, so they're all like, oh, you know, he's betrayed the town, he's no longer one of us. And we also have, like, the question of who is in the right here and what justifies your actions, and how, like, people use God or their comforts to hide behind, to cover up their sins. And like, you have characters that are very self-righteous, like the David Ramsey, the preacher, who thinks, oh, I'm a preacher, I'm redeeming myself of my sins, but then he gets very self-righteous and like casting the first stone on people, thinking that he is in the right, and he's not. He doesn't, he acts like he's this saintly person, but then you find out he's a bit of a hypocrite. He's not so innocent. And I think it's really their kids that kind of teach these people their sins, like shines a mirror on their own sins. Like, you have Angela, Cordelia's mom, who is very vain, and she was in love with Hayes' dad when she was a teenager, but then they broke up and she got pregnant with the man she married, his child. And she's kind of resentful and bitter that her life is not great and they're not that well off. She can only afford to be working at Landis' store. She has to live with the fact that he's happily married to someone else, and she kind of has a hard time connecting with her child. But after what happens, she really starts to connect with her child a lot more. But she also still maintains that vanity and liking attention and being like, I deserve the accolades. At one point, her husband, Bucky, who was just the constable and he worked at the dump for a little, also, he had to take a second job. They make him sheriff because they think he's the only one. It turns out the mayor is his best friend anyway, so that's a little bit of nepotism going on there. Although I guess nepotism, not necessarily, because it's not family, but they are friends. So I don't know if we consider the same thing. I'm gonna have to look that up. He makes him the sheriff because he thinks he's the only one who can deal with the problem. And also, it's like, oh, we don't want to deal with it, so let's just make Bucky the sheriff. And that's his name, Bucky. And though his wife is very proud, she's like, oh, my husband's the sheriff. Angela's like, my husband is the sheriff now, and she takes credit for that too. And it's just, there's a lot of religious undertones in this. And like, it also kind of reminds me, what I have not watched the movie, but I watched Ending Explain, where that on that channel on YouTube basically explains what happens and they explain midnight mass. It kind of has similar vibes to that, where like there's a town and the preacher shows, this new preacher shows up, this really young guy who preaches is very self-righteous and wants to drag people into his cult. And then also Revival by Stephen King comes to mind with this book as well. It is a very different story and different themes, but it still has some themes that are similar, like hiding, questioning God and, hiding behind God, which actually it kind of does the opposite in Revival, where the guy questions God's existence and paradise and everything. He said this was really good, a very compelling read, very dark, and it's like one of those stories where you don't know if this is really the supernatural is going on, if this woman is really a witch or not, or maybe it's all just in their heads. Like, especially with characters like Hayes, who sees everyone has a demon face, and it's like, is this really happening? Is he really seeing demons? And they said there is racism in this with Medric's character. It really like has that, also explores the theme of like, what is that phrase? Children, how our children are like have to deal with our sins. I can't remember what that phrase is. There's a particular phrase I'm trying to think of. The sins of our parents, something like that. But it's very creepy and suspenseful, and like I said, you don't know if there's really something supernatural going on or not. It's just a really great, very creepy, unsettling read that really deals with small towns, and it's really, and if you're a Stephen King fan, I think you'll enjoy this. So that is my wrap up, and for once I was not interrupted. When I do long videos, a lot of times I get interrupted. And now I have my new shelf. I finally got it brought up because the shelf we got for free, it had to be repainted, so I finally got it. So I can finally put my books on there. I'm gonna use this opportunity the rest of this day to reorganize. So I was gonna take a walk, but I don't know, I might not, because maybe I should at least get out of the house and do a walk. I'll have to double check on the weather, make sure it's not calling for rain, because it is very overcast right now. So I'll go for my walk, and now I'm done with the book Curse of Crow Hollow, so all I have to do is read Anna Karenina, and I'm off tomorrow, which is nice, so I don't feel rushed or anything. But I think other than taking my walk, I'm gonna eat a salad for although it's almost 3 o'clock. So I'm gonna do that, and then after I do my walk, I'm going to reorganize my bookshelf. I think I'm going to go by author this time instead of color, because and I do have a lot of new books, and then I might be getting some new books. I'm going to Black Castle Books on the 4th, so I might be getting new books then. I don't know how many, but like I said, I am going to place an order of books online tomorrow, so I might wait. What I might do is not get that order just yet. I might wait until after I go to Black Castle Books. I don't know. I'll see. I'll think about it. But either way, I have a few more hours before I can. But anyway, so that is my wrap up for the first quarter. I think it was a good first quarter. I'm very happy with my reading. I feel like I mixed it up a lot, and I'm glad that I finished a trilogy. And I read some of the short stories from some of my collections. And made some progress on those. And I finished some tomes, which I'm happy about that as well. Let's see, let me see, how many tomes? Okay, so I finished The Shadow Wolf, although that one wouldn't really count, because that's one that I read in one go, wasn't seeing on myself. So The Physician was one. And okay, let's see. The Physician, I finished Ruin of Kings, that's the other big one. And I did a lot of rereads like Salem's Lot, The Wastelands, and I did start reading the Wizard in Glass. And I'm still reading Anna Karenina, and I do need to finally finish this year. My goal is to finally finish Way of Kings, so I can start the next book. I don't know if that's Oathbringer is the next one. I don't know. I'll have to double check. But I gotta read that one as well. And then there's and I did Curse of Crow Hollow, was one of those books that I bought that I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep it or not. And I want to read it first before I make a decision, because there are a lot of books that I will buy, and then also I'll change my mind about them after they're sitting on my shelf for a period of time. So I'm glad I read that, along with and then I will read High Rise along with High Rise. High Rise is another one from the roast office that I bought. And then I want to read this book talk book, the Night and Its Moon, which I know there's a lot of people that don't, this is another one of those books where it's like, it's kind of, on the one hand, it's one of the books that I have that where it's like, how people have very strong opinions on it that are not always great. Like one of those books where it's one of those books that people seem to mock a little bit. Like TikTok books have that reputation of being mockable books. But I want this to be one where I actually read it before I watch reviews, just to decide for myself, because I feel like I've had a habit of sometimes letting BookTube influence me. So I want to read this because I do, like I said, I don't read a lot, but I do love some of these romances, some of these paranormal fantasy romances. And I personally actually like the cover. I like the two hands touching. One of the hands is made out of stars in the night sky. I think that's really pretty. And the second one is already out, and it's a paperback, which is good. So I can buy it if I end up really enjoying this. But yeah, I really liked it. And I liked the premise. The premise sounded really good. And I'm just trying to avoid Mads something. I finally remember this one channel's name that her rant reviews sometimes I watch, where she does reviews for books like this, and I'm trying not to watch that one because I know she did a review of this book and it's not going to be good. I don't think it's not going to be positive by the look of it. It's Mads Reads a Lot or something like that. All about Mads. It might be that. I like her channel, but I don't want to, because I know I want to read this because I mean the biggest problem is I bought this. If this had been bought at Roast Office or Black Castle, then that wouldn't have been such a big deal. But because I bought this at Books A Million, I spent full price on it, so I am determined to read it and to enjoy and give it a shot. And I, like I said, I'll probably, a lot of times I enjoy books like this, well, not exactly like this, but sometimes books that people don't love, I end up enjoying, like Shadow of What Was Lost and the Ruin of Kings. I liked it. Books that are polarizing I often like. So I'm going to try it. I want to read it sooner rather than later. So maybe I'll read it in April. And I gotta read it before, because my cousin's graduation is coming up, and we might be traveling. So I want to get this done before that happens, because then I might get stuck having to make a decision what books to bring. But anyway. So that is like I said, that's my wrap up for this month. For this quarter, and now we begin the second quarter as of tomorrow. So I look forward to enjoying my adventures in books, and I hope you guys enjoy this wrap up, and it wasn't too long for you. I hope you don't mind me doing quarter wrap ups. So if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, click subscribe. If you haven't already, click the bell notification below if you want to be notified about when I post my latest videos. And I hope you all are enjoying your reading, and I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye!